The last rays of sunset painted the foothills of the Carpathian Mountains in hues of amber and crimson as Duchess Valentina Thornwood made her way up the treacherous path. Snow crunched beneath her boots, and the winter wind cut through her fur-lined cloak like a knife. Still, she pressed on, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Behind her, the small contingent of guards and servants who had accompanied her this far watched with solemn expressions. None would venture further. They knew what awaited at the summit. "My lady," called her steward, his voice quavering, "please reconsider. There must be another way to save our people." Valentina paused and looked back at the loyal man who had served her family for decades. His face was etched with worry, but she offered him a reassuring smile. "The plague has claimed half our province, Edgar. Our best physicians are helpless, and winter has only just begun. If the ancient texts are true, the mountain guardian can grant protection against all illness." She adjusted the heavy satchel at her hip, containing the offerings suggested by the old crone who had told her of this legend. "I shall return before the new moon." Though her words were confident, Valentina felt anything but as she continued her ascent alone. The path narrowed, bordered by dark pines laden with snow. As darkness fell completely, she produced a lantern from her pack, its glow creating dancing shadows across the white landscape. Hours passed, and fatigue threatened to overwhelm her when the path finally opened to a vast plateau. There, silhouetted against the star-filled sky, stood a structure unlike any she had ever seen. Not quite a castle, not quite a natural formation, as if the mountain itself had been carved and shaped into towering spires and walls. As Valentina approached, massive doors twice her height swung open silently. She hesitated at the threshold, steeling her courage before stepping into the vast entrance hall illuminated by torches that flared to life as if by magic. "I seek audience with the guardian of the mountain," she called, her voice echoing through the cavernous space. Silence answered her. Then, a deep rumbling that she felt more than heard vibrated through the stone floor. "Few mortals dare to climb so high." The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Fewer still enter uninvited." A shadow moved in the far corner of the hall, a shadow far too large to belong to any man. Valentina held her ground as the figure stepped into the torchlight. He was enormous, twice the height of the tallest man she had ever seen, with shoulders broad as an ox cart. His face, partly concealed by a thick beard streaked with silver, might have been handsome in a rugged way, were it not for the stony texture of his skin and eyes that glowed like embers. "I am Morden," the giant said, his voice like gravel. "Why do you disturb my solitude, little human?" Valentina dropped into a curtsy. "I am Duchess Valentina Thornwood. My people suffer from a wasting plague. Our legends speak of the mountain guardian who can grant protection from illness. I have come to beseech your aid." Morden circled her slowly, his footsteps causing small tremors. "And what do you offer in exchange?" "The old ways demand balance, a gift for a gift." Before she could answer, a cold wind swept through the hall, extinguishing several torches. Morden stiffened, his glowing eyes narrowing as he scanned the darkness. "We have a visitor," he growled. From the shadows, a figure materialized as if composed of the darkness itself. Unlike the giant's thunderous movements, this newcomer made no sound at all as she glided across the stone floor. Valentina gasped. The woman before her was inhumanly beautiful, with alabaster skin that seemed to glow in the dim light. Her hair, black as midnight, cascaded down her back like liquid shadow. But it was her eyes that captivated Valentina, violet eyes that held centuries of knowledge and power. "The mountain giant and a human noblewoman," the stranger said, her voice melodic yet edged with steel. "What an unexpected gathering." "Lyria." Morden's voice held both recognition and wariness. "The alpha of the eastern covens. You are far from your territory." The vampire queen, for Valentina now recognized her as such from the old tales, smiled, revealing the tips of delicate fangs. "The world shrinks as the centuries pass, old friend." Lyria turned her violet gaze to Valentina. "I sense noble blood in this one. Ancient lineage. How interesting." Valentina felt exposed under that penetrating gaze, as if the vampire could see through flesh and bone to her very soul. She fought the urge to flee. "The human came seeking my protection for her people," Morden said. "Her business is with me." Lyria circled Valentina slowly, inhaling deeply. "Perhaps, but I sense an opportunity that might benefit us all." She stopped directly before the Duchess. "Your blood carries power, little noble. Old power." Morden crossed his massive arms. "Speak plainly, Lyria. What scheme brews in that ancient mind of yours?" The vampire queen straightened, addressing them both. "I need a husband," she said directly to Morden. "And you need strong children, lonely mountain giant." Silence fell over the hall. Valentina looked between the two immortal beings, confusion evident on her face. "And where do I figure in this arrangement?" she finally asked. Lyria's smile widened. "You, Duchess, will be the bridge, the covenant maker, and in exchange, your people will have not only protection from disease, but the guardianship of two ancient powers." Morden growled, the sound rumbling through the hall. "You speak of blood magic. Dangerous territory, even for one as old as you." "I speak of salvation," Lyria countered. "For all of us. The human bloodline's thin, the giant clans dwindle, and even my kind faces extinction as hunters grow more numerous and organized. We must adapt or perish." Valentina found her voice. "You propose marriage between the two of you? How would that help my people?" The vampire queen laughed, the sound like silver bells. "Not marriage as mortals understand it. A blood covenant, sealed with your noble lineage as the binding agent." She moved closer to Valentina. "The old blood in your veins, the blood of kings and seers, would forge a link between our kinds that has never existed before." "What would this covenant demand of me?" Valentina asked, surprising herself with her steadiness. Lyria's eyes gleamed. 3 nights of ritual, blood freely given, and your word that you will return each winter solstice to renew the bonds. "And my people will never again suffer from plague or famine," Morden rumbled. "The mountains would protect them, and the night would watch over them." Valentina considered her options. She had come prepared to offer herself as sacrifice if necessary. What difference did it make if the form of that sacrifice changed? "I require time to consider," she said finally. "Dawn approaches," Lyria said. "I must retire to my chambers below. Consider well, Duchess. Such an offer will not come again." With that, the vampire vanished as silently as she had appeared, leaving Valentina alone with the mountain giant. "She speaks truth about your blood," Morden said after a long silence. "I sense it too, the old magic. It is rare in this age." "I know nothing of magic," Valentina admitted. "Only duty." The giant's expression softened. "Then we share that burden. Come, you need rest and food. We will speak more when night falls again." He led her through winding corridors to a chamber that, while enormous by human standards, seemed to have been prepared for a mortal guest. A fire burned in the hearth, and the bed, though large, was not impossibly so. "This was once a place of congress between my kind and yours," Morden explained, noticing her surprise. "Before humans forgot the old alliances." Left alone, Valentina sank onto the bed, exhaustion finally claiming her. As sleep approached, her thoughts swirled with images of plague-ridden villages, violet eyes, and ancient promises written in blood. She awoke to darkness, disoriented until memories of her journey returned. A soft knock at the door preceded the entrance of a young woman carrying a tray of food. "The master thought you might be hungry," she said, setting down the tray. Valentina stared in surprise. "You are human? You live here?" The girl nodded. "I am Lyria. My grandmother was dying in the village below. The master healed her in exchange for my service for 7 years." She smiled. "He is fair, if solitary. And the vampire queen?" Lyria's expression grew guarded. "She visits rarely, but when she does, the mountain trembles." After the girl departed, Valentina ate the simple but hearty fare provided. Once finished, She explored her chamber, discovering a wardrobe containing several gowns that might have been fashionable a century ago. She selected one, marveling at how perfectly it fit, before venturing out to explore. The mountain fortress was a labyrinth of halls and chambers, some scaled for human occupation, others cavernous enough to accommodate Morden's massive form. In one such hall, she found the giant seated before a fire pit, carving a piece of wood with surprising delicacy. He acknowledged her presence with a nod. "You slept through the day. Night has fallen again. And your visitor? Awakened and hunting." Seeing her alarm, he added, "Not humans. Lyria's tastes run to mountain lions and bears these days. A concession to changing times." Valentina approached cautiously. "You and she have history. Centuries of it," he confirmed. "Once, long ago, my kind and hers were bitter enemies, then reluctant allies against a greater threat. Now," he shrugged massive shoulders, "we are among the last of the old powers. And her proposal? Is such a thing even possible?" Morden set aside his carving. "It has not been attempted since the days when humans still worshipped the old gods. But your bloodline makes it possible." "What is special about my blood?" Valentina asked. "My family has ruled these lands for generations, but we are merely human." "Not merely," came Lyria's voice as she materialized from the shadows, her violet gown nearly the same shade as her eyes. "Your ancestors were seers and truth speakers. They could walk between worlds." Valentina jumped at the vampire's sudden appearance. "You claim my family possesses magic?" "Possessed," Lyria corrected. "The gift diminishes with each generation. In you, it is but an ember of what once blazed." She moved forward with preternatural grace. "But enough remains for our purpose." Morden rose to his full height, towering over them both. "Have you fed Lyria?" The vampire queen nodded. "A troublesome bear that had been attacking shepherds in the foothills. Its blood was invigorating." She turned to Valentina. "Have you considered our proposal, Duchess?" "I have questions first," Valentina replied. "What precisely would this covenant entail? And how would it protect my people?" Lyria gestured to a table where an ancient tome lay open. "The ritual requires blood from each participant, freely given, mixed in precise measure and bound with words of power. Once complete, our essences become linked, not merged, but connected." "Through me," Valentina said. "Yes, your human vitality, your capacity for both life and death, creates the bridge between immortal kinds." "And in return?" Morden answered. "The mountain would recognize your people as kin. The soil would yield better harvests. The waters would purify, and disease would find no purchase in your lands. My protection would extend to your borders," Lyria added. "No hostile force, mortal or otherwise, would cross without my knowledge. And my children would be bound to honor the covenant for as long as your line endures." "Children?" Valentina looked between them. "I thought vampires could not." "Alone we cannot," Lyria confirmed. "But the covenant would allow me to bear children with Morden's essence. Not vampire, not giant, but something new. Guardians for a changing world." The implications staggered Valentina. "And what of me? Would I remain human? Changed, but still mortal?" Morden said. "The ritual would awaken what dormant gifts remain in your blood. Your life would extend beyond normal human years, but you would still age and eventually die. Unless you chose otherwise," Lyria interjected with a meaningful look. Valentina paced the chamber, mind racing. "I need more time." "We have little," Lyria said. "The winter solstice approaches, the only night when the ritual can be performed. 3 days from now. 3 days to decide the fate of 3 races," Valentina murmured. "A heavy burden." "Power always is," the vampire queen replied. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation and contemplation. Valentina learned more about her hosts, how Morden had once been part of a thriving clan of mountain giants before human expansion and warfare had reduced their numbers to a handful of solitary individuals, how Lyria had risen to lead the Eastern Covens through centuries of internal strife and external threats. She learned of the blood hunters, fanatics who sought to eradicate all non-human beings from the world, and whose numbers had grown dangerously in recent decades. And she began to understand why this covenant might represent salvation for all involved. On the eve of the solstice, Valentina made her decision. "I will participate in your ritual," she told them as they gathered in Morden's great hall. "But I have conditions." Lyria raised an eyebrow. "Name them." "First, no human shall ever be harmed by either of you or your descendants within my territories. You will feed elsewhere or on animals only." "Agreed," Morden said immediately. Lyria nodded more reluctantly. "Second, you will teach me everything about my bloodline, what powers might be awakened, and how to control them." "That would be my pleasure," Lyria purred. "Finally, should children result from this covenant, they will be raised to respect human life and autonomy. They will be guardians, not conquerors." "On this we are aligned," Morden rumbled. "I have seen enough of conquest to last many lifetimes." With terms agreed upon, preparations for the ritual began in earnest. Deep beneath the mountain fortress, in a chamber carved from raw crystal, Lyria helped Valentina bathe in water infused with herbs and minerals. Her skin tingled from the mixture, and when she emerged, she felt strangely light, as if the water had washed away more than mere grime. She was dressed in a gown of purest white, embroidered with symbols she did not recognize but somehow understood were protective in nature. Her hair was left loose, falling to her waist in waves of chestnut brown. When she entered the ritual chamber, Valentina momentarily lost her breath. The circular room was illuminated by hundreds of candles floating in small pools of oil. At its center stood a raised dais with 3 points forming a triangle. Morden occupied one point, his massive form draped in dark green robes that matched his ember-like eyes. Lyria stood at another, resplendent in violet and black, her pale skin luminous in the candlelight. The vampire queen beckoned Valentina to the third point of the triangle. Between them rested a silver bowl atop a pedestal of intricately carved stone. "The winter solstice marks the longest night," Lyria began, her voice taking on a resonant quality that filled the chamber. "The moment when darkness reigns but begins its surrender to returning light. A time of endings and beginnings. A time of balance," Morden continued, "between earth and sky, between flesh and spirit, between immortality and mortality. I stand at the crossroads," Valentina found herself saying, the words rising unbidden to her lips. "Neither fully of darkness nor of light, but of the twilight between. The bridge between worlds." Lyria smiled. "The old blood remembers, even if you do not. Are you prepared to bind us, covenant maker?" Valentina nodded, suddenly unable to speak as power began to fill the room. The air grew thick with it, pressing against her skin like the moment before lightning strikes. Morden extended an enormous hand over the silver bowl, a ceremonial knife gripped in the other. Without hesitation, he drew the blade across his palm. Blood the color of molten copper dripped into the bowl, sizzling upon contact with the silver. "I offer the blood of earth and stone," he intoned, "the strength of mountains and the patience of ages." Lyria stepped forward next, taking the knife from him with reverence. Her cut was precise, her blood darkly crimson as it joined Morden's in the bowl. "I offer the blood of night and shadow," she said, "the wisdom of centuries and the adaptability of darkness." The knife came to Valentina last. Her hands trembled slightly as she accepted it, but her voice remained steady. "I offer the blood of mortality and vision," she said, making her cut. "The passion of life and the courage of those who face death." As her blood met the others, a reaction occurred. The mixture began to glow with an inner light, swirling of its own accord. Lyria began to chant in a language Valentina did not recognize but felt she should. Morden joined, his deep voice complementing the vampire's higher tones. The chanting grew louder, the light from the bowl brighter, until Valentina could barely see through its radiance. Then, at some signal she sensed rather than saw, All three reached forward to place their still bleeding hands into the mixture. Pain lanced up Valentina's arm, not from heat but from raw power. Visions flashed before her eyes. Mountains rising and falling, forests growing and receding, cities building and crumbling, all in the span of heartbeats. She saw Morden as he had been in his youth, surrounded by others of his kind. She witnessed Lyria's transformation from mortal to vampire centuries ago, and she glimpsed her own ancestors, men and women with stars in their eyes who spoke prophecies and walked between worlds. The visions grew more intense, threatening to overwhelm her. Just as Valentina feared she might lose herself entirely, she felt Morden's strength anchoring her, Lyria's will guiding her. The three of them were connected now, their essences intertwined yet distinct. When the light finally faded, Valentina found herself kneeling on the dais, supported by Lyria's surprisingly strong arms. Morden stood above them, his expression one of wonder. "It is done," he said softly. Valentina looked down at her hand. Where the cut had been, a silvery scar now traced a pattern that resembled neither wound nor any symbol she recognized. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Lyria helped her to her feet. "Now we complete the covenant. Morden and I must." "I understand," Valentina said quickly, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "No, you misunderstand," the vampire queen said with a laugh. "The physical union is but part of it. Your presence is required throughout. You are the covenant maker, the witness and the binder." And so Valentina remained as the ancient ritual continued through the longest night of the year. Parts were beautiful, others terrifying, some intimate in ways that transcended the physical. Throughout it all, the three remained connected by the blood magic they had invoked, their minds occasionally touching in ways that left Valentina breathless with the enormity of their existence. By dawn it was complete. Exhausted but transformed, Valentina watched as Lyria retreated to chambers deep below the mountain to escape the coming sunlight. Morden carried Valentina to her room, his touch gentle despite his enormous strength. "Rest," he told her. "When you wake, you will begin to feel the changes." He was right. When Valentina rose the following evening, she felt different. Her senses were sharper. She could hear conversations 3 rooms away, smell the pine forests outside despite closed windows, see details in the dim light that should have been invisible to human eyes. More profound than the physical changes was the awareness of connection. She could sense Morden's presence within the mountain, feel Lyria's dreams as the vampire slept below, and beyond that, a new awareness of the land itself, her duchy spread out below, its people going about their lives, the ebb and flow of health and sickness across villages and towns. When she concentrated on the areas most affected by plague, Valentina discovered she could somehow redirect the mountain's vitality, channeling it through her awakened blood to cleanse disease from entire communities. By focusing on fallow fields, she could encourage dormant seeds to stir with new life. Lyria joined them after nightfall, her violet eyes now holding flecks of amber that matched Morden's. "It begins already," she said, observing Valentina with satisfaction. "Your blood awakens to its heritage." "I can feel my people," Valentina whispered. "I can help them directly." "As was intended," Morden said. "The covenant works through you first, as its maker." "And the other outcome?" Valentina asked delicately. Lyria placed a hand on her abdomen. "It is done. I carry the future of both our kinds. By spring equinox they will be born." "They? Twins," the vampire queen said with rare vulnerability in her voice. "A son and daughter, the first of their kind." Valentina spent a week at the mountain fortress, learning to control her awakened abilities and strengthening the covenant bonds. When it came time to return to her people, both Morden and Lyria accompanied her to the edge of the giant's territory. "Remember your promise," Lyria said. "Return at each winter solstice to renew the bonds." "I will," Valentina assured her. "And you remember yours, protection, not dominion." "We are bound by blood now," Morden reminded her. "Our fates intertwined. We will honor our word." Valentina returned to find her duchy transformed. The plague had vanished overnight, leaving even those at death's door recovering with remarkable speed. Fields long barren showed green shoots despite the winter snow. And on her first night home, when a band of marauders attempted to cross her borders, they were found the next morning at the border crossing. Alive but terrified, speaking of shadows that moved with purpose and mountain paths that shifted beneath their feet. As promised, Valentina returned to the mountain each winter solstice. She watched as Lyria and Morden's children were born, extraordinary beings who combined the strength of giants with the grace of vampires and, surprisingly, aspects of Valentina's human compassion. They grew quickly, reaching adulthood within 5 years, and soon became guardians of the surrounding lands, protecting humans and ancient beings alike from threats both mundane and supernatural. Over decades, Valentina aged, but far more slowly than normal humans. Her awakened blood granted her extended life, enhanced vitality, and growing powers of foresight. She married a kind nobleman who accepted the strange duties that called her away each winter, and bore children of her own who carried the covenant in their veins. The alliance she had helped forge changed the fate of 3 races. Morden's kind, nearly extinct, found new purpose as guardians of sacred places. Lyria's vampires, once predators of humans, evolved into protectors of natural balance. And Valentina's people thrived under the protection of mountain and night, developing a society that remembered and honored the old alliances. On her deathbed, nearly 2 centuries after that first snowy climb up the mountain path, Valentina was visited one last time by her immortal covenant partners. Lyria, eternally youthful yet somehow wiser, sat at her right hand. Morden, unchanged by time yet softened by purpose, stood at her left. "You have served the covenant well, Bridgemaker," Lyria said, using the title Valentina had earned over the years. "As have you both," Valentina replied, her voice frail but her eyes still bright with the old magic. "Our races stand stronger together than they ever did apart." "What comes next is your choice," Morden said gently. "Your children will continue the covenant. You may rest if you wish." Valentina smiled. "I have lived long enough to see great-grandchildren born. I have walked between worlds and guided 3 races toward harmony. I am content to rest." Lyria leaned forward, her expression uncharacteristically tender. "Or you could join us. The covenant allows it this one time. Your blood is strong enough to survive the change." For a moment Valentina considered it, eternal life, endless power, watching over her descendants through centuries to come. But wisdom born of mortality guided her decision. "The bridge must remain human," she said finally. "That is the balance. But I thank you for the offer, old friends." As darkness claimed her, Valentina Thornwood felt no fear, only completion. Her last conscious thought was of that snowy night long ago, when a desperate climb had led to an unexpected proposal between ancient beings, and how the unlikeliest of alliances had saved them all. In the mountain fortress, now a thriving center of cooperation between races, the children of Lyria and Morden gathered to honor the passing of the first covenant maker. And in the night sky above, a new star appeared, small but brilliant, a light in the darkness that would guide future generations along the path Valentina had forged. The covenant endured, as did the words that had begun it all. "I need a husband, and you need strong children," said the alpha vampire to the lonely mountain giant. Words that had changed the fate of 3 worlds and created harmony where once there had been only shadow and stone.